Chase, let's cue the script and let's get to post-production. All right, let's get to a few of the big trends in post-production technology. The traditional TV and film market saw a steep decline. Reports showed a 35% drop in projects from Q3 2024 when compared to pre-strike levels in 2022, with slow strike recovery and increased outsourcing to the UK and Australia to blame. AI for creative editing surged ahead. Adobe, Resolve, and Avid expanded beyond transcription, introduced generative tools directly in their NLEs. Adobe Firefly and enhanced audios are now native to Premiere Pro in 25, while other platforms out there teased tools for rough cuts, titles, and scene extensions. AI for media management also gained traction, making MAM systems even more useful. Companies like Periphery, Wasabi, and Scale Logic improved integrations with tools like Iconic, Frame.io, and CatDV, enabling faster object, face, and dialogue searches for creative teams. Remote editing has become a standard feature for post facilities, with tools like LucidLink enabling teams to scale during busy seasons. Shared storage providers like SNS at Facilis developed secure solutions for remote access to on-prem storage, further streamlining workflows. Let's get into it. All right. So we're going to start with the state of the media entertainment industry in 2024. It continues to face challenges with U.S. production volume slowing down 35% in Q3 2024 compared to 2022. Many post facilities are downsizing, shifting operations, going international. Jeff, what are your thoughts on the state of the M&E post production industry? Is there a path to recovery for them?
I mean, before this event, I was on LinkedIn. Every time someone pops up, hey, I got a job, I'm like, oh, let's celebrate that. We need to. The thing I ran into, Mike likes to say that post-production is a lag indicator. It's the last part of the process. So it's not going to necessarily begin to pick up. People at the SVG show were saying that stages in Los Angeles are busy. So hopefully that is the pre-indicator, meaning, hey, there's work coming. But on the greater front, I feel that it's going to need to be regulatory and tax-based. One of the things that's happening is folks are running to places that have great tax incentives. We see a lot of productions coming out of Georgia, and there's a great amount of incentives for people to go there. So, we need assistance from, the governmental folks to help us get, kind of a kick in the can to get the engine started again.
Yeah. And Michael, comments. I know you've kind of been in the background, but now we're on post-production. So hopefully we're going to have more commentary. I wanted to hear what you're hearing from people on the ground level. But I'm also kind of curious, as we're in this transitionary period, is it making people start looking more at, breaking the rules a little bit? Maybe they were really restrictive on cloud, and now they're going to be less restrictive on cloud because it's cheaper in certain circumstances. How do you see the technology being shaped by this post-production trend?
Well, if we look at some of the higher end players in New York and LA, there's always been rules about what you can do in the cloud and what you can't, especially when you're working with someone else's content. So we kind of had to wait until those rules were kind of revamped, and that's what the TPN and TPN Plus did. But during the pandemic, so much content was created with people sitting at home or sitting elsewhere that it kind of proved that it could be done. And that's only continued to be enabled this year. In fact, this year, I don't know one production that I'd worked with that didn't have people working remote. And that meant, can we take the tools that we've traditionally used and either forklift them to the cloud or augment them with cloud components to kind of cobble something together? And what we really found is that there almost has to be, let's go back to the drawing board and start from scratch, because trying to bolt on different things often just made more trouble than it was worth. And so that's when the cloud solutions ended up popping up even more. And that dovetails directly into AI, because the majority of the AI stuff that is done in the cloud, right? That's where you get compute and storage.
Yeah. And let's get into that actually. AI for creative editing, generative AI tools like Firefly for video and Premiere Pro are catching attention.
Even that clip that we were playing out, I used Audio Enhance right to export it, and it turned my voice into this beautiful podcast voice. Anyways, color correction, transcription are arguably having a bigger impact on the editor's productivity today. Michael, as someone who works closely with editors, what are you hearing about the AI tools that are generally useful versus those that might just be a little overhyped right now?
There's a ton of AI grifters out there. There just is. And one thing that a lot of folks have to remember, if we remember when Final Cut was killed and Final Cut 10 came out, right? People conflated the launch of the product with the actual product, right? The product was great for what it did, but the launch is what soured people. And when we look at AI, all the marketing hype has been around generative AI, the Soras, the image and video and audio generators that are creating something out of nothing, or utilizing, let's say, influence from things it was trained on either illegally or legally. But the thing that really is going to change our industry, and already is, and more people need to jump on it, is the concept of analytical AI. Analytical AI is taking content that's already been created and generating meaningful metadata from that. So that would be reading a script and summarizing it. It would be looking at an hour-long episode of a TV show and knowing who said what, and if they were happy, if they were sad, if they were speaking a different language, scene detection, those types of things. And as any editor can attest to, you spend a lot of your time looking for appropriate B-roll, or going to stock houses and finding content, or finding that perfect music track, which takes forever. You're never done. You just hit a deadline. And so analytical AI is what allows us to search and find and sift content, or discover content, as it's more commonly called, to find that content for editing. And that's where we're seeing a lot of play right now. In fact, all of the major NLEs all have some form of analytical AI built in, whether it's editing via text or transcription, or Adobe, who's just been leading the way with integrating the Gen AI Firefly, but also putting in text to speech to text and text editing tools directly within the editor.
Yeah, Mike Kavanaugh, what are your thoughts? What do you think is kind of the biggest roadblock to adoption? Is it just that everyone's still stuck on Media Composer version 8? Or is it just that people have ethical concerns, or it just doesn't look that good? And we're specifically talking about the NLE side of things. We'll get into media asset management later. What's keeping people from running to AI and editing the same way we run to ChatGPT to ask a quick question?
I think right now it's really a matter of adoption and figuring out where things are. I mean, there's a lot of things going behind the scenes of AI integration where the studios won't put it on paper, but they're looking and saying, how can we integrate together localization faster? How can we, NVIDIA's Maxine technology allows for my voice to go through multiple different languages sounding like me, which is insanely crazy, but that's not going to hit Hollywood immediately. I mean, there are a lot of contracts and everything else. And we actually see, the worship side probably being the first market for adoption. It used to be porn, now it's worship. That's just one of those things, I guess, that are happening. And it's exciting because people are looking at multiple languages and getting that out. But I think it's really a matter of adoption. And one of the things we're really looking at, where we're going to have Michael Kamas, and this is news to him, start teaching some classes at our Keycode Education School about AI and integration of those tools and how people can use them to be more productive. I think people are right now scared. They are scared about what's the impact on the job. As we just discussed, the level amount of editors working right now is substantially lower than it's been in years. And a lot of people want to be in the industry, but they're also very nervous about what's going to be the impact of AI on my job as a startup level from, like, say, becoming an assistant editor when AI can now do 80% of that job.
Mike, I'm going to disagree slightly. And what I mean by that is, for the past 40, 50, 100 years, the only way for to be involved with mass media was film or television, right? So you had to adhere to whatever the standards were, whatever the personnel, whatever the infrastructure was to do that. And we've seen over the past several years that the number one job that young Americans want is to be an influencer. And that is completely outside the traditional Hollywood, film, New York film and television world. So they no longer have to be worried about, I got to learn how to use Avid. I got to learn how to use Avid Nexus and bin sharing. And I have to remember, have to understand VFX handoffs. Should you? Because as you get bigger in, whether it's M&E or as an influencer, do you have to know that to work with larger groups? Yes, but you don't have to follow the the neon arrow that we have for film and television. I think that changes a lot of workflows. I think, as you can attest to, we often consult with clients who are startups and have those small podcast studios, but we also work with ones that have the most followers on YouTube. And we find that as they add more storage and more stories and more viewers and more subs, they need to rise. And what we find is that as much as the up and comers want to change the world in the way filmmaking is done, when it comes to how media making is done, when we get back to working in groups collaboratively, you still have to kind of follow how things are kind of done, because we've all had the slings and arrows prior. And this procedure may seem archaic, but it's what's needed when you're working with a lot of different people.
That just goes to
Totally agree. I mean, some of our top clients this year are influencers as compared to the traditional post-production studio facility or broadcaster. And things are changing where anyone can communicate and get things out there. And I think AI is going to be a huge enabler, allowing people to have, basic stuff, image tracking, stabilization, image capture, just data analysis, localization. I think we are in a very exciting time on how people can get their content out to market. And this next 2 years is going to be super exciting on the evolution around it, specifically in post-production.
Awesome. Well, that was a great conversation. I like how it also evolved to just how post-production in Hollywood might be slowing down, but boy, is it booming for corporations, or YouTubers. It's really going, it's exploding in those areas. And those people are a little less restrictive in the requirements they have to follow so they can use these AI tools and use these newer solutions. I'm going to transition to AI for media management. We kind of separated this one out because I know we've done a lot of work on media management this year. AI has proven to be a game changer for media management, collecting that metadata, asset searchability, particularly for mid to large teams. On-prem solutions for companies like Periphery, ScaleLogic are gaining traction, while cloud-based options for AWS, Wasabi, and others continue to evolve. Jeff Sangfill, having implemented an on-prem AI media management this summer, can you share your insight in where these tools are today? Are they ready for the prime time? What should teams expect when integrating AI for media management? Is it as simple as turning the AI box on, or is there a lot more involved, like traditionally setting up a media management?
There's a lot more involved. You can't just turn it on and all of a sudden get all this wonderful goodness. The thing we've discovered is there are some boxes out there that have that in mind, and you turn them on and you can get the wonderful goodness. Is just going to be next week or maybe the week after. Just takes a while for it to process content. And the other thing we discovered is some of the boxes that do this very quickly, you've got to have someone with a deep programming knowledge in order to make it behave itself. And the other thing also we found out, and we kind of did this on purpose, we had rolled out an AI system with, it was an older computer we had around, and a fairly decent GPU that we also still had around, to see what happens with, someone who comes along and says, give me the software, I'll just run it on what I have. No, for the love of God, no. It hurts. It's extremely painful. And a lot of the AI implementations are geared toward the most modern hardware. So even something that was, $20,000 GPU from 2019, the new stuff is leaving it in the dust. So, are we ready for prime time? Yes, probably in the cloud. And my may have other thoughts on this as well, but not quite really on-prem, I think, in any way that's quick to get you actionable results.
Well, to take it a little further, we went from there, and I basically told the tech team at Keycode Media, I want the last 2 years of every broadcast to post ingested in. I want to see summarization. I want to see transcription. I want to see translation. I want us to play with image identification. I want to see facial recognition. And they were like, oh God, Mike's making us do this again. But, I'm really leaning into AI. I mean, it's going to be utterly transformational. And, because we have all this content we've been producing over the last, 10 years, we have a lot of information, a lot of data that we're able to test and be able to provide our clients guidance on how this can fit, where it is, what are the gaps. I mean, one of the big gaps we're seeing is all these different AI providers are grabbing a lot of freemium code and trying to drop that into their model. And a lot of it's still, literally Linux-based line coding to make changes. And I think that level is going to change very rapidly. And we are aggressively driving everything we're doing and getting our hands dirty on figuring out how well is this working and testing it on our content so we can have communications with our clients about what is the meaningful level of what AI can do, how it's working, and how we make it work, and be able to show real-time examples, and then be able to work with them on their footage to be able to better understand their library and remonetizing it.
And the thing there is having that directive. Here is the business case that we would like to do. That's the perfect thing. You really need to start with that, because AI, when you get into it at the beginning, it's this panacea. Oh, it does all those things. And no, you don't need to necessarily do all those things. There are certain things you need. So like Mike said, transcription, translation, summarization, face and object identification, those were critical to what we wanted to do. And that was a business process set. The thing is, AI does a heck of a lot. And like the results we were getting from our systems, we've been plugging those into asset management with Iconic, which is, cloud-based, because it's a nice, easy fit, and we can scale that up as we need to. The thing there is you're able to generate a lot more metadata than you necessarily need at this point in your process, either business metadata, production metadata, or archive metadata. But throwing away metadata, you will regret that later. Keep it. And that's one of the things we're trying to work on is metadata portability, because your asset management system that you bought 5 years ago may not understand all the cool stuff your AI tools can deliver to it, but something else is going to come along a little later and be able to do that. Or your asset management system may end up with a software update and suddenly, oh, look, all the new hotness just came online. So that's one of the other takeaways we've had. One, don't build with old hardware. And two, don't dispose of metadata. And there's ways to turn that into JSON files. And JSON files are just sidecar files. And you can put those on Scottish.
Our good friend Bryson Jones at North Shore Automation said it in one of our panels we had. When you started asset management, you started with great hopes of maybe creating 20 fields to tag. And then after year 1, they're down to 7. Year 2, they're down to 3. And really how we're viewing it at Keycode Media is the next generation of asset management. You don't know what you're going to need to tag to view in the future, but AI now can solve that problem for you instantly by harvesting that specific need, that specific search, and being able to pull and cull that information incredibly quickly.
But I'd like to add briefly with that, Matt. I know we have to move on. A couple things that we've learned from years or the last year of working with clients are a few key things I think I'd like to share. Mike kind of alluded to it, is that the technology of asset management that no one really wanted to use because you had to do labor before you were creative, we have to go back to that. We have to go back to asset management, but now the fields are being done by AI. So that's what we have to return to. But that also means we need an asset management system that can handle that. And a lot of legacy asset management systems don't support clip or time-based metadata. They don't understand what happens from moment to moment, just that something happened that we were looking for in that clip. So you'll, as a client, need to have an asset management system that can do that. Also, keep in mind that what model you're using. Is your model censored? Is it being done filtered through a larger corporate entity that may be getting rid of things that you want to search for? Also, if you're using third-party APIs, 12 Labs is a very big one, unless you're using OpenAI or Anthropic. How were their models built? What are they trained on? And lastly, keep in mind that all models are pretty much a black box. If you buy an AGA or Blackmagic card, you know what the ins and outs are, you know what the specs are. When you get a model, you don't know all the data it was trained on. You don't know what biases, you don't know what censorship's been done. So you really need to do due diligence to make sure that the model you're using is actually appropriate for the task you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and there's a lot of
And
players out
Michael,
there.
just a follow up on that one, Michael. I think we thoroughly covered roadblocks. I think it's really important to talk about the challenges with on-prem versus if you can access the cloud, how much that makes it a little bit easier. We talked a lot about how the setup is it's not just an on switch. It is kind of like asset management where you're building out something that's going to take time, just like building out a database. Michael, maybe just kind of end it on some of the coolest things you've seen with AI and asset management. We talked about face detection and transcripts, but what are the coolest implementations have you seen in putting AI into asset management?
Oh, AI into asset management, first off, is just using a third-party AI provider, but that's kind of the lowest bar to enter, right? I like what Iconic is doing. They'll have more announcements next year about analytical AI. As was alluded to earlier, the products like Carol One from Scale Logic is really in its infancy, but it has a lot of promise. We also have things like AI Plus from Periphery, which is one of the first solutions in M&E that is doing the chain of thought, right? Why use a massive model to look at just the text you put in when you don't need something, you don't need the modal of that multimodal model to look at that particular part of data. You just need something that understands text. So doing the chain of thought to use the most appropriate and cost-effective model for that one task is what we'll be seeing moving on. There's also a kind of grassroots application that I fell in love with over the past year. It's called Jumper, Get Jumper. Take a look at it. It's great. It works inside Premiere and will do a lot of your analytical AI before Adobe ends up rolling theirs fully out in the upcoming months.
Very cool. All right. Well, moving on to our final topic before we get to lightning round is remote editing and cloud. So remote and cloud-based editing tools continue to mature in 2024. Solutions like LucidLink enable teams to collaborate with seasonal freelancers. We have a great customer example of how they're using that. While Teradici, I don't think it's called Teradici anymore, Jump Desktop SNS. Thank you, AJ Anywhere. Yeah, Facilis Fast Cache provides secure remote workflows for on-prem media. Michael Kamath, what new innovations are creative teams adopting in remote editing workflows this year that may be different from previous years?
Look, I love LucidLink. I've loved LucidLink for years. I thought for a professional, the pricing was great. There were a few gotchas, but it worked, and it was deployed at literally thousands of clients. But what we've seen is that everyone else has realized that's a pretty good idea. So we're going to see next year, especially, a lot of other technologies that are similar to LucidLink, right? Whether it's what Hedge is coming out with, whether it's what Media Anywhere unveiled. There are a bunch of other companies that are doing things that we can't legally talk about right now, but that are going to do LucidLink type things in this coming year. What that also has meant is that there had to be innovation on how to use cloud storage, right? Cloud storage usually came in 2 or 3 different flavors: your Glacier, your cold storage, your object storage, which was good for light stuff. And then there was block storage, which was expensive, but was great for video. We're now seeing companies that are saying, look, we can take object storage, which is usually difficult to work with, and put some management on top of it so we can use lower cost storage for cloud editing. And that's being used not only by companies like LucidLink, but also companies like Create, which was formerly Bebop, or what EditShare is doing with their Flex product, which is putting their file system on top of cloud storage. So we're seeing more and more ways to make the cloud less expensive and thus more usable by media teams.
Very cool. Mike Kavanaugh, do you want to add anything there? I know we have a great corporate client down in Irvine that really has a great use case on how they're able to flex up and down their team. If you want to share that or any other insight on how you've seen customers using remote technology for post.
Well, I think the biggest part of it is really a consumptive based model where in the cloud, you're paying for what you use. Although a lot of the manufacturers are really trying to rope clients into longer term contracts, say a 1 year or a 3 year contract, which does lower your usage costs, but it doesn't allow you the flexibility of quickly ramping up and quickly ramping down. I mean, Avid, you can rent the Media Composer in the Avid cloud for a week and run it up, run it down, expand. And so there's a lot of things going on. Adobe, driving through LucidLink has just been, compelling and has transformed people where they no longer have to have on-prem storage. But there's a cost to that, where if you do the math and you say, I'm looking at getting an SNS, Facilis, Quantum, Avid, et cetera, and having it on-prem and setting up a remote workflow, your costs are less than the same comparable level of cost where you're looking, LucidLink could be $80 per month per terabyte. And that's, looks up very, very quickly. And you're paying that for the rest of eternity as compared to the traditional model of buying a fixed amount and maybe scaling from there. From an economic perspective, they're just different ways where the cloud gives you incredible levels of flexibility. But at the same time, as you're scaling up, it also becomes very expensive where the CFOs start wondering, why are we paying all this money in this one field? The creatives say, well, we're able to do so much more and we're much more flexible. But that's really been the trade-off that's going on from an economic standpoint.
Hey, Mike, I think
Hi.
there's one slight difference there. And I agree with you on at the corporate market where there's production work being done for internal comms or marketing 365 days a year. But when we get to project-based, whether like television, for example, or even video episodes on YouTube or a VOD platform, you don't want the liability of that technology. What do you do with it after the show is over or it's not picked up for another season? And so when you get into cloud editing, that becomes the real awesome use case, because now you can say, look, I need it for 3 months. The cloud editing providers have, many of them have said, look, you get charged one price and you get all this underneath it up to X amount of hours. And if you need more, okay, well, we do overages, but it doesn't become nickel and dimed of every hour. And that is especially attractive to start and stop productions where you don't want the technical liability, you don't want the support liability of it, you don't want to own it after the production's over. I can spin it up in the cloud and be ready to go in a day.
I totally agree. I mean, and really, when you look at it from an economic standpoint, that's basically called reduction of barriers to entry, where you don't need $50,000 to start. You can literally start your production, ramp it up. If the pilot gets greenlit, you can continue, do your 12 episodes, ramp it down, you're done. Just like the old world of rental, poof, it's gone, except you're not moving all this equipment into a facility or someone's home. So the flexibility there and the barrier of entry is just radically lower for people to create content.
Jeff, anything you want to add there as well?
Sure. I mean, that's a rental model we are trying to get our heads around, because it really is all about support at that point. And one of the things that was always a big problem at the end of a show is if everybody finishes, they're all gig workers, they walk off. And you're left with a box of stuff. There's LTOs and there's discs and there's all sorts of wonderful stuff. And no one's going to take your calls because they don't care about it. In the cloud, you can hand over that custody of that data to someone else, or they still have the originals because they've done the upload into the cloud provider area. So it makes it a lot easier to close these things out. Because, I used to have those walkthroughs in the vaults back when I was in facilities, and people would say, well, what are you going to do with this? I don't know. Let's see who we can call. We don't have to worry about that anymore.
All right. Well, I think we're going to go into our product lightning round. Going to put my toad head on. So let's get started with the best or most exciting products that you have all seen in the post-production space this year. Michael, let's go ahead and start with you.
I've got two. I can't decide between them. When you're working in the cloud, review and approve, especially live review and approve, can be really expensive. But I've kind of fallen in love with Looper, Louper. And that's a live review and approve platform that is like Zoom for creatives, and it's low cost and it's fantastic. And as I mentioned earlier, Jumper for Adobe Premiere is fantastic as well.
Very cool. Jeff, how about yourself?
I'm going to flip from where I was in broadcast, the ultra high end, Barco's steered laser projector, HDR for color grading rooms. They introduced it at CinemaCon this last March to the wider audience. A lot of people have already seen it in different previews in Hollywood. It is awesome. It will not only change the way people do color grading for theatrical, but it's going to change the entire theatrical experience. So we have something that's going to completely modify exhibition and allow a whole different realm of storytelling, because HDR in a theatrical environment is extraordinarily expensive and difficult. This brings down the cost of entry, even though it's not a cheap projector, but it's going to be an awesome tech change.
Very
I have
cool.
one, Matt, but it's
Steve,
it's
coming in
not
the
necessarily a
post
product.
conversation. Come on, Steve.
Yeah, I'm digging it.
The water's
I'm
great
learning-
over here, Steve.
I'm learning lots here. It's actually SMPTE for the adoption of the 2021-41 substandard that deals with fast metadata, because now we've got an ancillary channel that's going to feed lots of good information into all the post-production software to keep track of how it was shot, what audio was going on, and how you were capturing that audio, all that kind of good information that will help the post guys do a better job of editing and producing the final content.
All right, Mike Kavanaugh.
I got a couple, but because I write the checks, I got to say it. Number one, Adobe's integration of Premiere with Firefly for AI, I think, is just scratching the surface, and it's going to radically change how editors, specifically in the Premiere world, leverage AI for creating better content. An oldie but goodie. Avid finally came out with full round trip cut, mix, cut integration between Media Composer and Pro Tools. And I think, in productions where audio is critical, but I still remember from 1995 being, cussed out by Michael Bay when he was cutting The Rock, where he wanted to go back and forth between AudioVision and Media Composer, which the technology just wasn't there, even though we knew who he was. Lastly, I like what Avid's doing with Huddle integration for Teams. I think it's really slick. And my last pitch, which we're big supporters on, is Storage GNA's Fabric, which effectively is data unification across archive, cloud, and local storage, giving you a visibility and a dashboard of really understanding where your media is and the costs that you have around it.
That's that metadata portability I was talking about.
I'm going to need to create a sound effect for Storage GNA as well when we bring Mike Kavanaugh to these calls. So cool. All right.
One of the things that's still out there, OpenTimeline.io. OpenTimeline.io has come a long way. That's where you save an Avid project, and then you open it up in Adobe Premiere, or you open it up in Resolve. So they've worked that piece out. The OpenTimeline.io group is in place there to help facilitate cross software collaboration.
I'm going to jump in here too, because I know we talked about the pre-call and it didn't get enough mention, but I just found those Elgato Stream Decks to be everywhere at NAB. And this isn't just post. I mean, we went to Michael Klein's house this year in one of our videos. You can check that on YouTube, where he's using it for post, and he's just has these LED hotkeys he set up for his post workflow. But then you walk NAB and you go over to the VisRT booth, and they're showing the new TriCaster, and they're have all these macros set up to just make their live production easier. And so it just seems like a very useful small item that I'm just going to say that everyone needs to have at their desks, and they're going to come up with different ways to hotkey things to turn on and cut this and cut that just much quicker than trying to do it from a keyboard.
Matt, I'm an elaborate. I've been using a Loop Deck CT for years, and the software was buggy, and now the Logitech owns them. It's even more buggy. And I bit the bullet and bought a Stream Deck XL, and I almost don't use the keyboard. I have a hand on the mouse and I have a hand on my Stream Deck, and it's fantastic. I wish I had changed over several years ago.
Yeah, if you like Stream Decks, you'll love the QuickLink control surface, because for the new switchers, they built in a giant control surface that's just a whole bunch of Stream Decks all glued together. It's great. And yes, I've been putting Stream Decks in every project I have, and everybody's like, "Oh, I can just fire all my macros and all of this, control 5 different things that normally have no business talking to each other from one button." Great.
And hopefully everybody's got a like and subscribe, automation in there. If you don't, this is the time to do it on the YouTube stream. Like and subscribe, Geekhood Media.
All right, great. So now I'm just looking at a lot of comments. Great insight. It just seems in there was some questions as far as uncompressed workflows I think we'll have to follow up with. But thank you all. I think we're going to kind of wrap it up from here.